Rebecca moves across the world. She's a Scirocco on the sand. She is the Nile that flows forever, cutting a wound across the land. She'll be your friend before you know her. She'll have your trust before it's earned.
So Weird Season 1, Episode 9, Rebecca, written by Eric Morris and directed by Michael Kennedy, is a very emotionally dramatic episode about Molly's passionate childhood friendship with a mysterious girl who showed up one day and disappeared just as suddenly. Molly has been longing her company ever since, wrote a song about it, and then a girl with her exact appearance shows up 28 years later, sending Molly reeling. What's going on? Well, if the cold open is any indication, something about people living a long time?
As long as man has lived, man has wanted to live longer.
The episode shows its hand to the viewer early on. Rebecca Habib, played by Nadia Lee Nascimento, who played Cassie on Animorphs, is 13 years old in appearance, but in actuality, 1,327 years old. She befriended Molly in 1971, when Molly was young, and is the same person who shows up in 1999, claiming to be the daughter of the Rebecca who Molly knew, but is Rebecca herself. This is obvious to the viewer. The instant that Rebecca shows up and starts talking to Fee and Molly, we know what's going on. There is no real mystery, only an emotional drama where how Fee and Molly react to Rebecca and how she reacts to them unfolds as the episode progresses. Plot-wise, the episode is minimalistic. Rebecca shows up, claiming to be her own daughter, really just trying to catch up with Molly, but Molly refuses to talk with the daughter as a proxy for Rebecca and demands to speak with Rebecca herself. Rebecca makes a suspicious comment about needing to call her that no one really trusts, but it's impolite to actually call her on it, so they just kind of let her go. And then Fee, Jack, Clue, and Molly all work together to help track her down. Fee learns from an archaeologist that Rebecca the girl has an affinity for ancient artifact restoration, as if she was there when it was new. When the kids see Rebecca with her mother, who looks nothing like her, Jack writes it off as just an obsessed fan, and then tells Molly, while Fee figures out the truth. She confronts Rebecca, who confesses what she is to Fee, and says that it's a curse to live so long, because they have to sever emotional ties to avoid discovery. She reminisces with her about Molly, and on Fee's urging to take a chance, says that she'll meet Molly herself and explain. However, Rebecca's parents find out, and, like any good magicians, perform the secret move. By the time Fee takes Molly to her house, they're long gone. Deeply hurt by the experience, she goes to her concert and chooses the first song to be Rebecca, the song she wrote about the deep betrayal she felt. Unbeknownst to them, Rebecca sneaks in to watch her good friends sing. And that's the episode. Really, not much happens. There's no epic battle between good and evil. No one's life is on the line. However, the point is about how the characters relate to each other on an emotional level. A major theme of the episode is love, and how people should treat the ones that they love. No one in the episode is evil on the level of Brick Ryu or N/X. The episode takes a humanistic angle of treating everyone as fundamentally good and capable of feeling love and performing good acts. But there are antagonists who don't show enough kindness to the ones that they love, who are contrasted by protagonists who do. The Habibs are mysterious, but Rebecca's parents appear to not have a good relationship with their daughter. But their concerns of violent hate crimes, if their secret were to come out, is legitimate, being based on an experience where some people once tried to kill Rebecca by burning her at the stake. Like a witch. But the harsh, authoritative way that they treat Rebecca is not healthy. Rebecca demonstrates maturity as a 27-year-old, but they still treat her as a lesser person, to them as adult Methuselahs, for lack of a better term. And they restrict her freedom. As much as this episode has villains, these are them. However, there are other antagonists who we don't see, but are referenced. Molly's own parents, who we later meet in Season 2, Episode 11, Banshee. They seem to get along well enough now, but as Molly describes, when she was around 13, she did not have a good relationship with them. They were constantly fighting. They are in parallel with the Habibs as parents who care about their daughters but don't treat them in a healthy way. And then Rebecca met Molly, and they developed a strong bond. The love they developed was pure, and they were able to show each other kindness that surpassed the way their parents expressed love. They became true best friends forever, the kind to last decades, even if Rebecca's parents forced them to part. Now, typically, when I see this kind of strong emotional bond between non-family members, I go to "Make it gay, you cowards," because you would never encounter a story about that kind of bond between people of different genders without heterosexual subtext. I mean, it's basically Tuck Everlasting, right? But the somewhat sketchy nature of Rebecca being more or less an adult in a child's body makes me glad for once that they left it as gals being pals. It's still a little sketchy even without romance, but I can appreciate the bond that they share as a true friendship. Generally speaking, good female friendships are uncommon in American media. There is such a focus on the male experience that female characters are usually only presented in a subordinate function to the male characters, with relationships between female characters shallow and only there in service to the male-centric storyline, as is addressed somewhat sloppily with the Bechdel test. It's therefore welcoming to have this strong female friendship presented in such center focus. Of course, when Rebecca's parents made Rebecca leave Molly without saying goodbye, Molly perceived it as a deep betrayal. As far as she knew, Rebecca abused her love the same way that Molly's parents did. Molly wrote a song about this betrayal, and there's a phrase in it,
Mystery shrouds her like an island. It is an island in the lonely sea.
that sounds a lot like the phrase in the song that she wrote about her father being emotionally abusive.
Island, my island, the rock is in me.
Is he the rock? Yeah, but don't tell him.
It might be a coincidence. Maybe the songwriter for So Weird is just repetitive. However, I'm applying Death of the Author. Art is in the eye of the beholder. I think Molly connects Rebecca's betrayal to her parents being emotionally abusive, and I think that comes out in her music. While we, the audience, know that Rebecca didn't really betray Molly, Molly and the realm of the mundane can only see it that way. So Rebecca ends up as a nominal antagonist, a sort of platonic version of the subject of Rudyard Kipling's The Vampire, describing an abusive partner.
And it isn't the shame, and it isn't the blame that stings like a white-hot brand. It's the cunning to know that she never knew why, seeing at last she could never know why, and never could understand.
After seeing these examples of good and bad ways to treat the people you love, it's implied that Molly took this lesson to heart and endeavored to treat her own family with emotional respect. Though basically acting as a person of authority, she displays great kindness in her interactions with her kids that contrasts with the dysfunctional relationship of the Habibs and her own with her parents in the past. Early on in the episode, Jack tries to get Molly to let him have his own car, and she rejects it, but does so in a very sympathetic manner, so it doesn't feel like an imposition on his life. Though considering the galaxy of fun he ends up having with his car, he honestly dodged a bullet. Overall, the Phillips family is pretty egalitarian, with the kids getting to run around on their own when they're done with homework, and Molly treats them seriously as friends on an emotional level. She is open about her grief, and talks things out with Jack, who remembers his father and can relate to her as a fellow grieving family member. And she and Fee conflict as people who care about their friends, or in this case, friend, and have conflicting needs. The way they conflict and then resolve is on a very equal level. Less the traditional parent and child, certainly different from how the Habibs interact, and more about the people who live together trying to have a healthy relationship. Molly's life is visibly better for having had Rebecca in it. Of course, Rebecca is the real star of the episode. Nadia Lee Nascimento does an amazing job with the character. Child actors are always a bit of a risk, but she does really well with the role of a centuries-old girl, somewhere between what we would think of as an adult and a child. Really, something we don't even have a name for. She's eldritch, beyond anything we can really understand, but she has relatable emotions. She really deeply cares for Molly, and she accepts Fee as her best friend's daughter and as a new friend. The way that Fee and Rebecca become friends is weird. So weird, in fact. Because sort of, they're relating on the level of two children, and sort of as a child and her mother's friend. Nascimento puts both into her performance, and it is so good. As a Methuselan, she is miserable because she is unable to exist in the world with all of the privileges of a normal person. She can't grow up with friends. She can't keep in touch with them after moving away. The world changes faster than she does, and she has memories of ancient times that the modern world barely has any knowledge of. She is a lonely nomad, as is her family. She alludes to her mother perhaps having a deep friendship akin to hers and Molly's, with a girl who the world has entirely forgotten about, not even having any existing physical reality, only existing in her mother's mind.
That girl's bones are dust now.
This long life is a curse. There is an interesting parallel between Rebecca's long life and Molly having to live without her. Molly values the memory that she has of Rebecca, in which she views her as a kind person, but sees the march of history as having eroded the vision that she had. The general shroud of mystery surrounding her is similar to that of the Methuselans' forgotten friends.
History clouds what I remember, the one that I wanted her to be. Mystery shrouds her like an island. Does she still remember me?
The use of the song at the end of the episode is a compelling stylistic choice. As a show about a singer on tour, thematic music is used a lot for an in-universe soundtrack, but this episode is the first in the series, I think, to really focus on a song as a way to tell a story. Molly expresses her feelings of betrayal through it. Rebecca listens to it as a way to illustrate her enduring loyalty, in contrast to what Molly thinks. And it provides a backdrop for the flashback of Molly frantically searching through her house in her efforts to find her. As far as I know, So Weird does not use a song so dramatically again until Banshee features Molly singing her feelings to her father, accidentally casting a spell, and providing a compelling backdrop to the paranormal action. Appropriate as Banshee is, in many ways, a thematic counterpart to Rebecca. The song and its themes are tragic and haunting, but I have to question some of the conservative subtext sneaking in about how the lifespans we have are good and shouldn't be extended.
If we could live forever, would we want to?
Rebecca's problems are specific to one small group of people having to live in hiding and aren't good arguments against medical advancement. Season 2, Episode 18, James Garr, pulls something similar with the depiction of a life extension experiment failing because a man's soul leaves his body. And Banshee has a message about there being a natural time to die.
There is a balance. Some die, others live.
Just because death can't be stopped, only slowed, doesn't mean we have to embrace it as a good thing. The world would be better if people lived longer. If there was a way to make everyone live as long as the Habibs, or shorten their lifespans to what the rest of the world has, it'd be endlessly cruel to pick the latter and not the former. An argument could be made that the real villain of the piece is intolerance. Imagine the good the Habibs could do if they weren't living in fear. And it's ultimately that fear that causes Rebecca to leave Molly. Twice. The real passion for the friendship is interesting in light of the interracial aspects. Race is never brought up in the episode, but it is an obvious subtext to the intended audience. A deep personal bond between a person of color and a white person would have been remarkable in 1971, and its usage in a 90s TV show appears to be deliberately political. 90s TV saw a lot of efforts to subvert societal racism by depicting interracial friendships and communicating a message of respect between races. While now the black best friend trope is seen as lacking, just as a lazy attempt to show characters of color without immersing them into the main storyline, it served a specific progressive purpose for its time. Further, I think casting a black girl to play whatever ethnicity Rebecca is supposed to be is excusable because her actual ethnicity probably wouldn't be castable, being ancient and bones being dust and all. Overall, it's a progressive, compelling portrayal of a tragic interrupted friendship told like a love story in a one-off season 1 episode with no lasting effect on the So Weird myth arc. However, that's not the entire story. Rebecca was going to have a much larger role in the show, and that recontextualizes a lot of the episode. In 2001, shortly after the show ended, John Cooksey, the showrunner and executive producer for the first 2 seasons, conducted an interview with a fan in which he discussed how Disney Channel was concerned about the increasingly heavy subject matter and kept the writers from doing what they wanted with the show. The way things happened after Disney Channel's involvement was that Season 2 resolves the main arc of Fee searching for her father, with Rick rescuing her from N/X and giving her memories of him to protect her from the malicious agents of the Nexus. And the general Fee storyline is wrapped up in the first episode of Season 3. The show transformed into a lighthearted series of adventures deemed more child-friendly, and we never find out anything that would recontextualize Rebecca. However, Cooksey shared a summary of where they would have taken the show that does. He intended Season 2 to end on a cliffhanger where N/X drags Rick's ghost to hell, and things would kick into high gear in Season 3, where Fee would fight an epic battle of good versus evil to rescue him. The entire Phillips family would become aware of the paranormal, and Jack would be upgraded into a reincarnated knight, there to protect Fee and fight monsters, as he accidentally does in Season 1, Episode 8, Strangeling. Rebecca would return to provide exposition, having known Jack's previous incarnation as a little 100-some-year-old girl. Also, the standalone Season 2, Episode 17, Avatar, was originally conceived of as Chrysalis, a much heavier episode about Molly's history with alcoholism, something otherwise only hinted at. And it would have featured Rebecca again, at least as a computer screen if not actor, emailing Molly and helping her through her issues about being a recovering alcoholic and her troubled marriage.
I never got the chance to tell you things didn't go the way I'd planned.
Whether or not they would have discussed their personal relationship and why Rebecca left is anyone's guess, though I imagine they would have worked out their issues with each other in some form, possibly leaving something unresolved until Rebecca's final return in Season 3. Following Disney Channel's rejection of the episode, its lighter replacement Avatar also revisited the subject of Rebecca, with the episode's villain trying to tempt Molly with Rebecca's email address, serving a similar purpose as Chrysalis and setting up Rebecca's return in Season 3. So let's take a look at Rebecca's email address, rebecca1300@star-star.net. These were the days when people's email addresses weren't especially creative and were more about their IRL personas. So there's nothing too complicated here. She uses her real first name, or at least the one that she uses in daily life, and then a number to distinguish it from all the other Rebeccas. She went for a little joke, with 1300 being her general age. At this point, she would probably be 1328 years old. But by using the century, she won't have to get a new email address until she turns 1400. The email domain name, star-star, is intriguing. It's a reference to star.star, the Microsoft knockoff of So Weird, featured prominently in Season 1, Episode 6, Simplicity, named after the means of searching for all files in a command prompt interface. Molly wrote their jingle during her sellout days before she managed to become successful as an independent rock singer.
Don't sing it.
Touch the world, near and far.
We're all one with Stardust Star.
And her anxieties over being known for writing jingles is a recurrent theme in the show, but it looks to me like Rebecca specifically got a star.star account because Molly wrote their jingle and she wanted to support her endeavors or show her Molly Phillips fandom. It's a nice touch. And that's it. That is all we know, but we can't speculate from hints we're given. With the understanding that Season 1, Episode 9 Rebecca is not a standalone at all, but instead the first act in a 3-act plot that was never finished, Various details that we would otherwise dismiss are recontextualized as important. Though we never got a proper chrysalis, there is another episode we did get that fulfills a similar role as Act 2, not Avatar, but Banshee, which hints at things that were to be revealed in Act 3, which we now only know about because of the interview. So, briefly, let's talk about the other episodes. Banshee? But first, Strangeling, the Act 1 to Banshee. Directly preceding Rebecca's introduction is Strangeling, an episode about Fee accidentally releasing a dragon from a book cover and needing to convince Jack, dressed as a knight, into scaring it back inside before it eats her and her cousins. Jack just thinks it's a bit of make-believe, but the dragon probably recognizes Jack from his previous incarnation. Aside from setting up Jack's story arc, the episode introduces the concept of Fee's great-grandmother Fiona, who Fee is named after, a family spell book that appears to contain real spells, and the concept that Fee's maternal bloodline, the O'Shannons, has witches in it. Then, in the next episode, Rebecca shows Fee a scrapbook containing an image of Rebecca and Molly dressed as witches for Halloween, and mentions knowing great-grandmother Fiona. When watching the episode on its own, it doesn't seem to be much more than emphasizing Molly's childhood as the setting for Rebecca's friendship with her. However, with knowledge of the overall myth arc, it can be seen as foreshadowing to the concept of Molly being a witch and great-grandmother Fiona somehow being important. This is followed up on in Banshee. In Banshee, we meet Molly's parents and a banshee. Fee talks with the banshee, who apparently mistakes Fee for her great-grandmother Fiona, but insists that she knows who Fee is, and then takes her to the banshee's boss in an ancestral castle that appears out of nowhere. While Jack searches for her, a shot of him is intercut with a suit of armor. The paranormal scene ends with the sense that this is all foreshadowing to that season 3 that never happened. That suit of armor was clearly worn by Jack's previous incarnation, and I think it's reasonable to conclude that Fee is also the reincarnation of great-grandmother Fiona.
We have met before, Fiona.
Fee. Fiona was my great-grandmother.
I know who you are.
Reincarnation is the name of the game, and I'm sure this would have been made clear in Season 3. So, Rebecca knows Jack by his past incarnation, and I think we have to conclude that prior to becoming Molly's mysterious best friend forever, she knew Molly's past incarnation.
She understood me. She understood everything.
And honestly, that throws the great platonic love story into question. The vague sketchiness of a long-lived being ingratiating herself with a young girl is emphasized when their connection is based on an element of deception. That convinces me that it was a good idea to keep it platonic. It's already close enough to Lolita that we don't need this level of problemacy. The tragedy is still moving, but there's an undercurrent of creepiness to it that offsets my initial enjoyment. It's possible that Act 3 would have given this proper context, and even that Chrysalis would have heightened the creepiness for tension, and I think it's a shame that we never got to see what the writers wanted to do with it. The Season 3 context also throws off the progressiveness of the character. Presuming that she would principally serve the role as advisor to Fee and Jack, Rebecca's race would make her fall in line with a long series of racist media where the black character's power is used to assist white protagonists, essentially what they ended up doing with the Native American shaman who turns into a panther to follow Annie around and help her out of all of her scrapes. I would like to file that under Season 3 nonsense, but something similar could easily have happened with Rebecca in the first version. In the 2019 interview with Cooksey, conducted by the So Weird podcast, he takes a moment to reflect on the social politics of the show. He notes that the cast is overwhelmingly white, and indicates that if the show were made now, there would be more of a focus on diverse casting.
It wouldn't be as white a show, for sure. It would be much more diverse than we had the opportunity to be at the time. Vancouver didn't have a lot of diverse actors, and the central family itself obviously was white and Irish. So we did what we could, but there weren't a lot of choices, casting choices at the time. And I'm much more aware of that now. I'm pleased to look back and see that it was a female-driven show with a lot of women who are very, very strong in a kind of a third-wave feminism way, and that's cool.
He places a large part of the blame on actor availability, but implies that he and other white creators just weren't as aware of race politics as they are now. We can speculate that Rebecca's Season 3 implementation would have been a part of that, but if it were made today, I imagine it would be executed with more care. However, at the end of the day, all we have is this one episode and Molly's expression at the sight of an email address. We can speculate that the relationship would have been something sketchier or better in a modern show, but that's not in the canon we're given. For what it is, it's a great platonic love story, in an episode about emotional relationships, illustrated beautifully with healthy family dynamics, and a bittersweet ending driven by a tearjerker song. And that is something that is worth appreciating.
Rebecca,
Please like, share, subscribe, and consider donating to my Patreon. Pledges of $2 or more will earn you an explicit thank you at the end of each video. Thank you.